During the rehearsal for the play, obviously the actors were not father and daughter, but I just was interested in that experience. I assume you were there for rehearsals.
Yeah.
And um, so my question is about the father-daughter dynamic. Was there fine tuning you did during, as there always is, obviously, when you're rehearsing a play, where you gained extra insight into that dynamic of father and daughter? Or that's what I'm
Well,
interested in.
it's not only that I gain insight, I knew there was something missing in the play because the original play did not have that crucial scene where she says, "I want to be your friend." And
Mm.
and I think the most powerful line in the thing is she says, "You and I have been mad at each other for too long." And he says, "I didn't know we were mad. I thought we just didn't like each other." That's a dagger to the heart. But I would watch the play in our first run off Broadway and know that there was something missing. But, I hadn't focused as much on the character of Chelsea at first because I was more invested in the old couple. But it was like a lightning bolt when I realized what that scene should be. And so it was between off Broadway and Broadway, or we went out of town for a couple of, you know, um, performances in Kennedy Center and in Wilmington, that scene came to me. And once I had that, it was golden, if you pardon the expression. And but I also had learned about economy by that time. It's such a succinct scene, and it's only a few lines, but it says so much. So. Um, and I don't know. I mean, you can say the same thing. Where does inspiration come from? Where does insight come from? Did I tell you the story before about the fire, where Norman almost sets the house on fire because he leaves the newspapers on the hearth? I didn't
Yeah.
tell you that story. I'm didn't want to repeat myself, but I just told it to these fanatics who came for this in on Golden Pond fanatics weekend. But when we were in the middle of shooting, Jane came up to me one day and said, Tom and I were talking, meaning Tom Hayden, and meaning I don't think I want to hear what you have to say because keep spouses out of it. There's one over there. But I said, "Oh, okay, and sure." And so I wrote that scene, and it turned out to be, a sort of what do you call it, a fulcrum scene because we see Norman having to confront his frailty. And he fucks up. He leaves newspapers on the hearth. He would never have done that. And he almost starts a fire, and Hepburn snaps at him, and the boy tries to take the blame, and the old man snaps at him, and so it turns out to be really powerful. And so the next night at Daly's, Jane came up and gave me a hug and said, "It's so beautiful. What a wonderful scene." I said, "Well, it was your idea." And she said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You said you and Tom thought there should be a fire." And she said, "Oh, no, we thought maybe there could be a campfire and they could have marshmallows." So, it's brilliance by accident. I had no idea. But that happens all the time, and I love it when it
Mm.
happens. When you look at something, there's something missing. So that's the long answer to that. We weren't lucky with our casting with the daughter in the first couple of productions.
Mhm.
Uh, and it was probably partly my fault in just um, describing her enough. Not so much what she had to say, but I think there was confusion about the potency of that character because she's very, very strong. She just leaves her strength in LA and then has to sort of reconnect with it. And when I played Norman a few years ago, and I'll do it again in the next production, I have Chelsea punch him. She just is so frustrated with him. And he says, "I didn't know we were mad. I thought we just didn't like each other." And he turns away from her, and she comes up and pounds him on the back. And it was such a childlike manifestation of her years and years of frustration. So, um, you
And
know,
have you cast the daughter yet? that you're
No,
going to
not
play
even
against?
close. We don't
No.
have Ethel yet, so we don't.
Okay. And
The
when is
daughter will
this?
be.
When is this going to happen? When are you
I
launching this?
that in theory, by this time next year, we'll be on Broadway. So,
How exciting!
but a lot of it
Fantastic.
is who Ethel's going to be, and we have a lovely list of dream actors, she has to be of box office value because nobody's going to come see me. But there are lots of women who fit in that 60s, early 70s age group who I think will be delighted to take on that role.
I
There's a
actually
little.
think you will have a draw because you're the genius behind the play, you're the writer. And people, when I mention on Golden Pond and Ernest Thompson, they know who you are. So there'll be a particular fascination, I think, for seeing the playwright and the screenwriter play his own character.
Well, yeah, and I think once they realize I can act, I think that at first it may just seem. I remember seeing Tennessee Williams in um, Small Craft Warnings off Broadway, and he couldn't act to save his life. He was just put in there as a novelty act, and I think that happened with one other playwright. I can't remember who it was now, but I'm an actor, so I think
Right.
that people understand, and also nobody's ever played Norman the way I play him, and I go much deeper into the scary woods and much further into the intellect that the guy was, and Henry, bless his heart, was not my image of who Norman Thayer should be. He was a shit kicker from Nebraska, and
Right. And that was going to be my question. Who was your dream cast for the film?
I was such a naive. The dream cast was anybody who wanted to do it,
Right.
basically. And who's going to turn down Henry Fonda?
No.
And
And his
looking back,
daughter,
yeah,
who
looking
would play.
back, I think it was right around the time of Ragtime and what's his name? James Cagney showed a different James Cagney. He was much more professorial and elegant. Melvin Douglas would have been interesting casting for it, but no, those guys don't meet my image now. And when we spoke recently, what do you learn in the passage of time? I, I don't know if I told you this before, but I saw George C. Scott play Willie Loman at the Circle M Square, and he was like George C. Scott. He was vibrant and full of life. And you looked at that guy and thought, dude, you shouldn't have any problems. It's different when you see Dustin Hoffman. You think, oh, well, Dustin Hoffman,
Yeah.
yeah. But so that's how I play Norman. It's just this force of nature because I think that all those years he stood in front of a classroom at an Ivy League college and regaled those students with stories of great literature. He had to be that professor, that guy where you think, fuck, that's what
Right.
life is. And
Absolutely.
there's a double-edged thing to that. Um, First of all, uh, 15 years ago, he was forced to retire. So he lost his audience. So what does he do? He talks to his wife, he talks to the mailman. And so he's like a spider waiting for somebody to come near his web so he can have some fun. And along comes Billy. The other side of it, Patty, is that poor Chelsea. How could she ever measure up to that guy? She had that professor as her fucking father. And so every day she was on notice. Maybe you talk to my daughters, you'd get, maybe some residual of having that expectation from me. Is our grammar proper? Do we know how to form a sentence? Are we doing the right? Are we wasting time? Shit like that. So I know you want to ask about my daughter not speaking to me for 8 years. For 8 years, Chelsea didn't come home, and I can never get actors and directors to understand what that means. What happened from the ages of 34 to 42? She did not come home. Something was really hurting inside her. So why does she come home this year? Because Ethel, her mother, says, if you're going to come home, you better get your ass here if you want to see the father you've remembered. And so there's that, and then we don't know because he's coy and smart, and we don't know whether he's playing people, whether he's playing a game when he can't remember the next door neighbor in Wilmington or the lesbians up the shore. And so I really, in my production, I go after that stuff, and we get to see Ethel studying him, thinking, what message am I getting here? And so when he comes back and confesses to getting lost in the woods, and you've never seen the play, have you, Patty?
Not the play.
Yeah,
No.
because it's very different. In the
Yeah.
movie, and
Yeah.
I fought with Mark Rydell about this.
Right.
In the movie, he takes Norman into the scary woods, and we see what's happening. But that takes away the complete explosive dynamic of Norman coming back from the woods. We don't know what's wrong with him. He's just in a different place. He's way more sarcastic and unkind than Charlie the mailman. And Ethel's just watching like a hawk thinking, "Ooh, boy, this doesn't seem right." And he finally breaks down and he says, I came back so fast with my little bucket. I got to the end of our lane. I couldn't remember where the old town road was. I went a little way into the woods and nothing looked familiar, not one tree. It scared me half to death. So I came running back here to see you, to see your pretty face, to know that I was safe, that I was still me. Well, that's different than we already know. We already know why he's acting
Exactly.
crazy because he got lost in the woods.
When Henry would say things on set like, I don't need to see your face, after you wrap that scene, cut, did you observe any reaction from Jane of hurt or bitterness?
Yeah, she wears those emotions right on the surface.
I understand rifts. I understand how painful it is. So that is a segue to your own daughter, if you're willing to, share, and if you're, I'm just interested in. It is ironic, as you said, the 8-year
Yeah,
rift.
I know. I should
Was
have written 4 years or 4 months or something, but
but was that deliberate on your daughter's part to
I
prove
don't
a
think
point?
she wasn't doing the math, and she probably would still be mad at me to tell you the truth. I've been told by a therapist friend that those first 3 years of life are so essential. And if a kid doesn't have nurturing and affection, that kid pays a price for it. Interestingly, Heather and
Now,
Danielle
was she
came.
your biological daughter?
No,
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 so that's
neither
your
of them is.
point. That's
Neither
your
of them is.
point. Yeah.
Heather was just over 3. So she made it through the 3 years before their natural father left. Danielle was a year and a half.
I
And
see.
so I think there was unfinished formation of her sense of worth. And she carries it to this day. But I think of it often because I don't know if I told you this, but after the election, we stopped watching the news. If something's happened, don't tell me. But we just don't watch the news anymore, and which got us back into the dining room. Our
Right.
dining room in our 200-year-old house is fantastic, and I love sitting there thinking, for 200 years, families have sat at this table and shared problems and excitement and adventures, and so for all of their Wonder Bread years, that's where I was with Danielle, Heather, and August when he came along. And their mother was usually not here. So we would just, play charades. We would talk about what happened in school today. And I just reveled in it. And so I think that was really healthy. But a lot of that time at the table was, okay, Daniel, what the fuck is going on now? What did you do? Getting in trouble at school, slapping a boy, and I would try so hard in every way that I knew. And I had spent some time in therapy. I thought I knew something, but I could never get through. I could never sway it. So it's a great study in nurture over nature, because I think she was born with whatever that is, and I couldn't help her.
The nature nurture question is fascinating to me. And I mean, I see it in my own son. I feel very lucky. He was born with a particular nature that I'm not going to take credit for. I will take credit for a lot of things, but his ability to be in the present, to be kind, to listen to people, to just a sincerity. He was always that way, even as a
Right.
kid,
Hmm.
a baby, And
Yeah.
I remember putting him on a swing. He was 10 months old, and he would smile and look up at the sky and be in the moment.
Yeah.
And I really learned from him, like how
Yeah.
to be present. And I
Yeah.
think that's one of the best gifts of being a parent is when you have a child, they really do change you for the better and bring out their own positive aspects that I feel very grateful.
in a way, it's a compliment to the kid to chart her or his own course. And as you experience your kid's 30 now or
Yeah,
almost, you
almost. Yeah.
yeah. So you realize that, two things at the same time. One, you're not going to be able to change anything, and two, you're still the parent, and you will be the parent till your death, or if the kid predeceases you for some horrible reason. I take it you haven't had a chance to read the Book of Maps yet.
Not yet. I've ordered it. Yeah.
But that's all about, that. How do you break the news to a kid? The father in it has 16 states in 15 days to tell the kid that his parents are getting divorced. And he knows from my personal experience, it's going to change everything forever.
If I wanted to use like a 10-second clip of lines from On Golden Pond, like the, Friends or whatever, would I legally be able to?
Yeah.
That's
You
okay?
just have to get my permission, which I hereby grant
Oh,
you.
okay. Because I think that would be really effective. That scene, just those lines about friends, I think would be very poignant.
I agree, and it's powerful, because a more evolved, less egoistic man would have said, "Oh, I'm so sorry you feel that way. Of course we can be friends. I just thought we were friends, but not Norman." He says, "I thought we just didn't like each other." But that also suggests a lack of clarity and awareness on his part, and a fear that he could have picked up the phone any time in those 8 years and said, "Get your ass back here. What the hell? You're my kid." But he was too stubborn, too proud, and
Same with my dad. I
yeah,
know. I mean,
yeah,
it took me reminding him of his mortality and saying, hey, you have a firstborn son. And I know he wronged you and you wronged him, but, life is short. And he wasn't much for apology or insight. But he also was a man who was born in 1913, who lived through world wars, and he was a different generation
yeah.
and didn't believe in therapy. My mother secretly paid for my therapy because if he found out, he would blow a gasket because he said, all they do is blame the parents. That's all therapy is about. It's like, yeah. And your point is,
Well, that's not all of it, but it's a big part of it.
of
But
course.
so my father was 1909. Henry was similar vintage, and yeah, they were Depression
Hmm.
era kids. So it's understandable. It doesn't make it better, but I think the real question is, did the people do the best that they could with the tools that they had to work with?
Absolutely. And
And
he
that's
did a lot of great things. I mean,
yeah,
I do talk about that in my summation of dad. So,
good.
yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah,
So, thank you, Ernest, once
my pleasure.
again.
Great, great hanging.